Gary Stearman, hope you're having a good day. I am, and I have something very important to share with you today. This is being made for release on Thursday, the 4th of October, and it has to do with 911. By the way, you do remember 911, don't you? 911 of the year 2012, just a couple of weeks back. That is when the Benghazi attack on the U.S. consulate took place, resulting in the death of our ambassador, Christopher Stevens. There is an additional news note coming out of the Middle East that is most fascinating from Gebal just 5 weeks before America's presidential election. A U.S. intelligence report signals that al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri is preparing a string of terrorist attacks as the sequel to the murders of the U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other U.S. officials in Benghazi back on September 11th, according to evidence collected across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. And so the word is out that Ayman al-Zawahiri is planning other strategic attacks on United States consulates, the United States military and financial institutions. Ayman al-Zawahiri, let me read a biographical profile on this man. His name is Ayman Mohammed Ravi al-Zawahiri, born June 19th, 1951. He is a brilliant man who graduated and became a physician in Egypt. He became an Islamic theologian, and through a series of historical steps and missteps, he became the present leader of al-Qaeda. He was previously the second and last emir of the Egyptian Islamic Jihad, having succeeded Abdul al-Zumar in the latter role when Egyptian authorities sentenced al-Zumar to life imprisonment. And so that is just a little thumbnail on Ayman al-Zawahiri. Be listening for that name, because al-Zawahiri is the man who's pushing all the buttons right now. This article from Gebal continues concerning al-Zawahiri. His twin goals are to influence the polls' results and to build up his reputation as a master of spectacular terrorist operations. Yes, indeed, he's trying to influence Western politics by his actions right now, and he has picked a wonderful time to do it from his perspective. Eager to impress al-Qaeda's franchise chiefs, that is, the people with the money, Zawahiri is reported to be celebrating his Benghazi feat, that is, his first feat as al-Qaeda leader, and boasting of the harm to the Obama campaign caused by his administration's stammering denials that it was an act of terror. And so here we have Ayman al-Zawahiri saying, you should finance me, saying to the financiers of the Middle East, you should finance me because I was very successful at knocking out the Benghazi consulate, knocking out Ambassador Christopher Stevens. I have been successful. I will be even more successful if you give me more money. And that's what's going on right now. And Zawahiri is referring to the event in which al-Qaeda forces knocked out the Benghazi consulate. He's referring to that as the, quote, Benghazi feat, and saying it's just the first of many. Meanwhile, the news media on this side of the pond continue to attribute the Benghazi uprising to a little 6 to 10 minute, I don't know exactly how long it is, trailer about the life of Muhammad. Sheer nonsense. The al-Qaeda leader, the article goes on, and again his name is Ayman al-Zawahiri, is now seen not only by U.S. intelligence experts, but by most experts in the West, the Middle East, and Israel, to be impatient to capitalize on his current successes, and so dramatically exposed to the Muslim world America's perceived weakness and his own worth as commander of the jihadist movement. So forget that last guy. What was his name now? Let's see. I think, yeah, he got assassinated in some house over in Pakistan somewhere. Oh, yes, bin Laden was his name. Forget that name. The name to remember now is Ammon al-Zawahiri. This man is in charge of a group whose foundations really go back to the late 70s and to the early 80s. And the entire group is mentioned in Psalm 83. We should read this one more time. Keep not thou silence, O God. This is the way Psalm 83 begins. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom, the Ishmaelites of Moab, the Hagarenes, Gebal, Ammon, Amalek, Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assurs also joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot. And so this prayer continues. And the prayer is built around the idea, please, Lord, observe what our enemies are doing. Our enemies have said they're about to cut us off from being a nation. You need to do something to stop them. And by the way, that's the way this psalm ends. Do unto them, verse 9 of Psalm 83, do unto them as unto the Midianites. And you remember the great Midianite victory led by a man who was not even considered a leader at all. A man who basically was a farmer who just wanted to stay out of trouble. His name was Gideon. And God said to Gideon, I want you to go destroy the Midianites for me. And Gideon said, who, me? But eventually he did it with God's help. And so this prayer says, do unto them, that is, these confederates, as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the brook of Kison, which perished at Endor. They became as the dung of the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeeb, and all their princes as Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, let us take to ourselves the houses of God in possession. And so this psalm goes back to the old days, the victory of Israel over the Midianites. And it says to the modern confederates who have set their arms against Israel, it says to them, do unto these modern enemies as you did to the ancient Midianites who did the same thing to Israel, or who were threatening to do the same thing to Israel. Verse 13, oh my God, make them like a wheel, as a stubble before the wind. And again, that would be like a, if you can imagine, a burning tumbleweed rolling across the prairie and setting things on fire. As fire burneth a wood, as the flames setteth the mountains on fire, so persecute them with thy tempest, and make them afraid of thy storm. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek thy name, O Lord. Let them be confounded and troubled forever, yea, let them be put to shame and perish, that men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the Most High over all the earth. And by the way, in the King James Bible, the word Jehovah is spelled out all caps, Jehovah. And it's one of very, very few places in the Bible that name is spelled out. But the lesson here being, let them know who you are, God, so that there will no longer be any doubt that you really are God. Interesting times, interesting places. Keep watching for the name Ammon al-Zawahiri. He is the new Osama bin Laden. And, by the way, keep looking up.